In today's video, what we're going to discuss is width in your backswing. I'm going to share with you how to create a wider, more efficient, more coiled backswing to generate some more speed. Make sure you check this video out. Welcome back to the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me, Jon Watts, today at Branston Golf and Country Club. As I mentioned there in the intro, what we're going to discuss today is width in your golf swing. And I'm going to actually talk about a couple of downsides, well, not downsides, but things to watch out for when you're trying to create this width in your golf swing, in your backswing. If you do enjoy this content of the video, if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. If you just hit the little bell icon, it notifies you every time a new video goes live as well. So width, what we're talking about, for anyone who's unclear of that, width in the golf swing is really the angle from my lead shoulder to my wrist that we're not getting our hands moving closer in. Now, a lot of people mistakenly try and get width by moving the club head a lot further away from the body. Now, we do want obviously the club to be further away than my hands, of course it's going to be. But what I don't want to see is the player trying to get that club to work so wide that we see a lateral movement off the golf ball. I see so many golfers in that first movement where their hips are moving, swaying laterally away from the target, and they're really trying to get this width, and we often see the head movement away with it. So we've got to be very careful that yes, we can get that club moving on a bigger circle here, but I still want to keep a relatively centered axis. I don't mind a little shift off the ball, but of course we don't want to see a big lateral movement. That's something we've got to be very careful of when we're trying to create the width. The other thing that we've got to be careful of is I do want to create wrist cock in my backswing. So I do want my wrist to cock up, and we've got to allow them to cock down on the downswing. Now, if you look at elite golfers, you'll see a variance there. There's some like a Sergio Garcia, who's a very late wrist cock, almost does it in the completion of the backswing, into the transition, the start of the downswing. What would I personally like to see for the majority of golfers is actually the wrist gradually cocking up, and I'd like to see by left arm parallel that we're creating at least that 90-degree angle between our lead arm and club shaft. So again, another thing to watch out for with width is that you're not trying to go so wide that we end up in that position where we haven't created the wrist cock. The reason I'd like it to happen by the time our left arm gets parallel, I think if we're waiting to that last second to try and create that angle in our downswing, one, we've got to make sure we're gripping it very light. Two, there's another thing that's happening in the golf swing, and this part is over so quickly. So our golf swing is over in what, 3/4 of a second from first movement to impact. And 3 parts of that are going back, 1 part is coming down for the majority of golfers in terms of a tempo. So if we're trying to, on the start of the downswing, create wrist cock, shift our pressure towards our lead side, recenter ourselves, there's a lot of things happening, there's a lot of things going on. For me, it's easier if we create that wrist cock angle in the backswing. So gradually working that way, so when our left arm, lead arm, so it's left arm for me, gets to left arm parallel, I'm creating this 90-degree angle. So yes, I like to see width, but I don't want to see width with a swaying movement, and I don't want to see such a late wrist cock. As I said, it does work for a couple of golfers, Sergio Garcia being one of them, but it's not something that's going to work perhaps for the majority of golfers there. So width is great, and we do want to feel that, but I want to stay very centered as I'm making that, and I do want to allow my wrist to cock. So for me, the width I'm trying to maintain is here, okay, all on my lead arm, that I'm not collapsing my arms too early. If we are flexible enough to make that big turn and keep our lead arm dead straight, fantastic. Not everybody can. If they're not supple enough, shoulder blades in their lats, in their upper back, they may have a little bit bend by the time they get to the top of the swing, and that's fine. Don't worry about that. You can, yes, keep working on improving your flexibility, but a little bend here isn't the worst thing in the world. We just don't want to see hands and arms lifting the club to the top. I want to see the body coiling to the top of the backswing. And for me, that's the real thing about width. We're trying to create a big coil up in our backswing. We don't want it just to be hands and arms lifting the golf club to the top. So what I can do in terms of a golf swing is just rehearse what I'm going to be feeling in my backswing. So quite I'm a little bit behind the ball here with a driver, but I'm trying to stay relatively centered. I'm not shifting laterally too much. I'm creating width, big coil up, but I'm allowing my wrist to cock up to 90 by the time I get to lead arm parallel to the ground here. Feel that big pull that we can create in the backswing from creating that big coil. We want to feel that, and it's actually a good idea to do some when you're on the driving range practice area where we just stop at the top. We do a freezer exercise, so we feel that pull. We do a nice slow backswing. Slow backswing. And then go ahead and pull the trigger. So we're creating that width, but we're still keeping relatively centered and we're still allowing our wrist to cock up. We need the wrist to cock up to be able to maintain that angle, releasing it nearer the golf ball. So width, great, but don't sacrifice body position. Let me just hit a normal one for you. Feeling that movement again, a big coil up in the backswing. And I'll take that one all day long. On the green there, pretty close to the flag. Felt a good movement, felt that resistance, that pull in the backswing. So width, great, but make sure you're staying very centered. It's a good idea to get it on video, draw some lines that we're not creating a big lateral shift. So we're trying to rotate, we're not trying to create a big lateral shift. And that's the things we've got to look out for when we're trying to create more width in your golf swing. The other point there, as I said, was the wrist cock. We allow the wrist to cock up so we can maintain that. Find what works for you. By all means, you may be a Sergio where you want that late movement in there, but it's a little bit harder because there's so many things happening in the downswing. If this video has helped, as I said at the start, give us a thumbs up and do subscribe to the channel to never miss any more content.